Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Arrow as well as the latest episode of Black Lightning. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time and to start talking about each of the respective shows. So for example, if you want to hear what I say about this week's episode of Arrow, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Black Lightning. But the first thing I want to talk about is this week's episode of Arrow. Interesting episode. Obviously, Oliver is getting to the point that he's trying to win the city's trust, because he thinks if he can win the city's trust, he can win Emiko's trust, because Emiko doesn't want to have anything to do with him, because in her mind, Oliver having the queen name, it's like all the queen name does is destroy, and it's just like, you're just like your dad. He left me and my mom out in the cold, and the fact of the matter is, like, I can't trust you. And Oliver's done everything he can to kind of redeem, the Queen family name. That's why he's done everything to become the vigilante that he became. It's what started him off on all of this with his mission, the mission his father gave to him. So, and you could tell it still hits Oliver hard every time he was hearing the story about, like, oh yeah, the story told back to him on, like, oh yeah, that only you and your dad were the survivor of, like, the Queen's Gambit, and, like, him knowing that's not the case. But then someone starts targeting him, kidnapping and hurting people because of this. In particular, it was this news report, well, not news reporter, but the person who had interviewed him, and Laurel, because I thought it was kind of neat, because, Laurel was talking about the fact of the matter is, it's like, oh, I'm glad to do this because, I want to, ensure, Quentin's legacy, and to be like, a legacy that my dad would be proud of. And then, Oliver being like, your dad, he would be proud of you. And, Laura kind of smiles, and because I think, obviously, her and Oliver kind of have the complicated situation that they have, and Oliver hasn't all he's liked and trusted her other moments, and not liked her and didn't trust her other moments. Because even Felicity's like, oh my god, it almost looks like you almost like Laurel for a second there, and he's like, actually, I'm almost there, because it's like she's kind of won him over with everything that's going on. And I think hearing that from Oliver kind of meant something to her, because it's like, hey, like, I am doing good, she is miles beyond who she was when we first got introduced to her, even, as somewhat recently as last season. It's just kind of nice to see how much she has progressed in that time. But a big part of this is the whole aspect of secrets and your past kind of still haunting you. And in Oliver's case, basically the son of his dad's bodyguard, the guy Oliver's dad killed before killing himself to make sure that Oliver survived, Sam, which that actor who plays Sam, I need to look it up, because he looks so familiar, and it bugged me the entire time. I'm looking at him, I'm like, he looks so familiar. I feel like I've seen him in something, I just don't remember what. But nevertheless, this whole thing Sam did was orchestrated because he wanted to get revenge, because he's like, oh, the city doesn't really know who Oliver Queen really is. The fact of the matter is they're embracing him as this hero. And it's still kind of crazy to see him running around, with the GC. Once I did it again. I brought that up before, like, I was going to struggle with that. I think I talked about it literally last episode. Like, I want to say GCPD every time instead of SCPD. It's just, obviously, it's one letter difference, so obviously I'm going to stumble on it. And it's also both DC shows. Nevertheless, but the SCPD, it's just crazy that they, like, oh, he's rolling with them, looking at crime scene photos. It's so weird to see him working in a more official capacity, and not even just like, oh, I'm the Green Arrow working. It's like, nah, I'm Oliver Queen / Green Arrow working with the guy. It's so trippy. And anytime he's pulling the hood back and he's not wearing a mask, I'm like, it's so crazy. I mean, it's like, you don't need a mask anymore, right? No point in hiding your identity. Everyone knows who you are at this point. It's still kind of a trippy thing, and I can't believe we're here in the story to, like, get to that point. I thought that's just so fascinating to me. But nevertheless, to the point, Sam is willing to hurt a lot of other people, even police, even threatening to kill them all if because Oliver finally admits everything. Because obviously he had talked to Dinah about it. But he wanted to quit at first because he was like, it's the only way to make, obviously protect Dinah's reputation, as well as, make sure no one else gets hurt. It's like, cops, we're, caught in, crossfire all the time. The fact of the matter is, we're protecting the city. Of course, we're going to be targeted sometimes. But for Oliver, it's because for him, it's like, this is my problem. This is my fault because I didn't tell Sam the truth. Sam spiraled because for him, it's like, for one, you know, he was probably fairly young when his dad died. Not super young, but probably around Oliver's age or whatnot. And it's a hard thing to find out your dad's dead. But not only that, but like the fact is your dad, nobody was ever found. So it's like, hey, he might still be out there. Oliver survived, maybe my dad too. So holding on to that hope, becoming obsessed with it, and to have that all ripped apart when it's like he reached, you know, the transcript between Dr. Parker and Oliver and learns the truth. That shatters his world because for so many years he's been holding on to this. Because let's not forget, it's been like 6 years since Oliver came back from Leanne Yu. So it's the 5 years of not knowing in between, and then the 6 years subsequently with like, oh, Oliver's still alive, so there's hope, you know? So he probably lost hope, gained it back the moment Oliver came back, and then like it was all shattered, you know? So it's understandable. Like, it doesn't justify what he did, but you can understand he was so heartbroken about it, you know? Because obviously everything that went down, he kind of went down a bad, dark route in his life just because of it, you know? So, and Oliver kind of understands, and he, you know, he's trying to take personal responsibility for it. Because Dinah's like, the fact of the matter is, you didn't make that choice back then. You can't change the past, but what you can do now is, you know, go forward and just, you know, choose to see what you do now. The choices you make going forward affect, you can't change what's in the past, but you can change with the future, and you know what choices you make essentially. So, but even in front of all those cops, Oliver admitted, like, you know, the truth to Sam, and Sam was like, it's about time you admitted it. But it wasn't enough for him. It's like, Oliver has to pay for everything. It's like, even, it's like all your fault. It's like, no, that was 100% his dad. He had no choice behind that matter. But the fact is, maybe things would be different if Oliver had told him the truth. But once again, it's like nothing he can do about it now. It's so interesting too. I noticed that at no point, I mean, maybe because she's trying not to. I'm curious about that. I mean, notice that Dinah never used her powers this episode. I feel like that'd be more effective than your gun, but I guess for her, it's like she doesn't want. I guess it's for her. It's like, I don't want to become too reliant on my own abilities, because if I get used to using them again for anything, rather than solving crime problems as a cop, just a normal cop, I'd be solving them as a vigilante metahuman. So I think maybe that's potentially what it's why. Because I was like, oh, I feel, or you know. I mean, I don't know if there's like another reason for that. I would have just assumed that's my thought process behind it. Because I was like, oh, I was kind of expecting like, oh, she's like, oh, no, just use my voice to kind of break through. Because she used the mat to kind of bust down her door. I'm like, couldn't you just use your... Because it's not like no one... Well... Oh, wait, I forgot. I'm such an idiot. I am such an idiot. Of course, no one knows that she's Black Canary. I'm so stupid. Like, I'm so idiotic. I'm sitting here thinking, like, oh, everyone knows everyone. It's like, no, Oliver's the only one whose identity was released. Like, obviously, like, Agent Watson knows about everyone else's identity, but, like, Oliver's is the only one that's public because of everything. You know, he went public with his identity, but no one else did. So, obviously, she can't use her powers around other people, or they'd know who she really was, and that turned into a whole complicated thing. If she got found out to be a vigilante, like, it probably would kind of undo all the work she's trying to do with the, SCPD, which I literally was about to say the G, and it's just like, nevertheless, I had a stupid moment there. Nevertheless. But then Oliver, in the end, does, bring the, he does tell the truth, And even the guy interviewing him, it's like, the fact of the matter is Sam is locked up. Why say this now? And for Oliver, it's like, I said I wanted there to be transparency. That doesn't just stop with not wearing a mask. He's like, I've made mistakes, and I'm going to make mistakes. I mean, to be fair, he's only human. But the fact of the matter is, like, I will not lie to you, Star City. Because a lot of people in Star City were like, oh, this guy is doing all this terrible stuff. Fire Oliver from the SCPD. I mean, to be fair, like, obviously, we saw before, a lot of people had their reservations about him being there. It's kind of a mixed bag, because a lot of people didn't, particularly like his methods in solving things. So he even talked about, like, oh, I'm going to be a lot transparent going forward. Obviously that wasn't just for Star City. That was also, aimed at Emiko. But when it's all said and done, Emiko actually was like, yeah, I saw what you said. Like, yeah, you're feeling bad because it was, years later, but it's like the fact of the matter is the truth is out about that whole, Sam's dad situation. That in itself speaks volumes, shows the difference between you and your dad. Your dad would have been willing to let those secrets stay buried forever. The fact is, you willing to tell the truth. So at the very least, she's thinking about opening a dialogue with Oliver, and he's like, I'll take it. So that's pretty neat. I'm interested to kind of see how this dynamic goes, this new sister in your life and what this, means for you, with her personal, path for revenge, Oliver's kind of been on that path himself. So I'm curious to see, his experience combined with hers in the sense of finding out more about how she got to where she is, where she got her training from and all that. Also how will Oliver approach her towards her goals, trying to get revenge, trying to find out who killed her mom. I'm assuming he's going to help, It's not just having to worry about this situation might actually be what takes steps towards bringing Team Arrow back together in a certain sense of Emiko's situation. I mean, currently, Renee and Curtis are kind of working with her, so I wonder, is that why Curtis said what he did this episode? Well, I'll kind of jump to it. Obviously, Curtis found out about, the Ghost Initiative, because obviously they're filling out their roster because they've got, was it White China? Is that her name? They've also got Cupid, and they got Slade's son, which I completely forgot about because he's like, the only reason why you're alive is because your friend showed up. I was like, what is he talking about? I was like, right, the crossover. I forgot Slade got taken down in the crossover. I think it was I was like, right. I was like, that's so interesting. I'd completely forgot about that. So it's like, poor bastard. But Curtis is not okay with this. He's like, Ghost Initiative, it's just another name for Suicide Squad. And before he even has a chance to say anything, continuing it, Lila kind of cuts him off. It's just kind of funny to me because it's you won't even refer to it as Suicide Squad. I'm sure that's not a thing of oh, you can't actually say that just because of, this is all Warner Brothers, so I'm sure they can, but it's just kind of funny. But I'm sure it was more so no one wants it to be known as a Suicide Squad because it's that's kind of it makes it a lot nastier than what it is, but when in actuality it is nasty. It's kind of interesting because even Curtis is yeah, these people are bad people, but they don't even putting bombs in their heads. That's inhumane. Even pissed about the situation with Diaz too, because being even though Diaz is the piece of crap that he is, who's tried to kill all of them multiple times, even he doesn't deserve the situation. It's oh, what about Oliver, Felicity? They know about this? No. And even John kind of being yeah, Curtis, this isn't a request. You're going to do this. So, because for Curtis, it's this is crossing a line that we shouldn't. But, John's kind of hey, this is the only way. Curtis found another way. He ended up creating this virtual simulation and ended up getting the information they need. But John's no, we're still going along with the Ghost Initiative. There's some really good work, boots on the ground, blah, 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 blah. And Curtis is just kind of you know what? No. The fact of the matter is, I'm not just going to sit here and blindly follow orders. I'm going to pay my own way. I'm curious, what did he mean by that? Because I'm about to say, are you about to up and quit, working at Argus? I don't think he is, but I guess he's going to handle himself a little bit differently. I don't know. Maybe that coincides with what I was thinking about. Was that what, was going on with the whole Emiko situation? Could that have been what he was referring to? I'm thinking it's more so on his personal work level, but maybe it's grand scope of everything. Kind of go his own way, kind of follow what he believes in, so. But he does bring up a good point. Yeah, you might be no, when this is all over, we'll shut down the Ghost Initiative. It's the fact of the matter is, higher up people, that dude already knows that you're already bringing it back. You're using it for a cover and everything. But eventually, it's going to get to the point they'll be actually, it's a good program. Let's keep it up. Even you might at one point, I don't know. It's really hard because John's yeah, it doesn't sit right with me yet. You're so okay with it sitting right with you because you're oh, we do so much with it. So it's kind of part of me makes you seem you're not as torn up about this. You're the one that threw this out there as a, because even Lila kind of chewed him out for it because it's you threw this out there as an option. You know how much it meant for her to shut this down, So to have him bring back the program, I don't know. It's just kind of an interesting thing altogether. I also loved, Curtis got to mess with Diaz, kind of mess with his head a little bit. It's like, oh yeah, the fact of the matter is you gave us all this information about Dante. Thanks. You know? Some other stuff, and this kind of ties into Laurel's story. It's actually kind of interesting. I'd completely forgotten about like the whole like, oh yeah, Earthworm Laurel had a drinking problem. I mean, to be fair, I don't know. Is alcoholism like genetic? I think it can be, right? I mean, I'm sure like, you know, if you're predisposed to it, like if someone in your family's in it, I guess you're most likely to potentially have, because, you know, Quentin had his issues with alcohol, and so do, you know, Laurel. But it was like, because Earth 2 Laurel was like, no, like, I don't have issues with alcohol. It's like, oh, I guess that's the one thing I have a leg up over your Earth 1 Laurel. Because it's like, yeah, because although the people always compare, like, oh, you're not Earth 1 Laurel, this, in that regard. It's like, oh, yeah, but I kind of win in this regard, which is kind of like, it's almost, it's kind of morbid in a, like, it's a morbid kind of perspective when you actually think about it. Kind of like, oh, I'm better than your Laurel in this regard. That's, I don't know, it's just kind of a twisted type of funny when you sit there and think about it in that regard. But it turns out Laurel has a stalker. It's this dude named Brett Collins, and it seems like it's a dude from Earth 2, and she doesn't want to tell anyone. She eventually tells Felicity, which, because even Felicity was like, you, apparently this is connected to a guy she killed, but it's like, you literally have no problem talking about all the different people you killed, so why is this one so hard for her? Well, for her, it's like, this is personal because Brett Collins is a drunk driver that hit and killed Quentin, Earth 2 Quentin, her dad, when she was 13. And the entire time she's held guilt over the fact is that, like, the last thing she ever said to her dad was, I hate you. And the reason why he was out driving anyway is because she made such a tantrum about the fact is that he forgot her cake. And it's so interesting. And now I think it adds this little interesting aspect to it of, like, it adds this different layer to her relationship with Quentin. It adds this new perspective on it. Like, the reason why, because obviously, like, the big thing was like, oh, obviously she got close to Quentin because her own dad died when she was so young, trying to fill that hole in her heart. Much like Quentin trying to fill the hole in his heart, the fact of the matter is his Laura was gone. But you can look at it another level too of, like, by getting close to Quentin, always kind of treating him right, even when she's kind of betraying him, like, being his little girl was to kind of make up for the fact is, like, you know, she felt guilty about, because the last thing I said to my dad was I hate him, so it's like I gotta make things work with this Quentin in a sense, you know. So you could add that perspective to, like, her relationship with him last season and stuff. I just think it's kind of interesting when you think about it. But it is like, the moment the dude was like, what's Earth 2? And I was like, okay, so what's this all about? I was like, was he paid to do that? Like, is that what that is? It seems like that might be the case, because later, well, I'll say that because it's like, because the way everything was kind of specifically tailored towards her, it was kind of like, but it seems like more so it's like the dude in particular is like anti-vigilante, so he was getting on Laurel about being a vigilante, and then like, oh, you're not what people think you are and stuff like that. It's just kind of interesting that the person in particular just happened to be someone that Laurel has a connection to on her Earth. It's like, oh, that seems like a big coincidence. But then later on, Dinah gets a note in her car, so it's like, whoever this is kind of orchestrating a very anti-vigilante situation, which is interesting considering vigilantes are very there's a very anti-vigilante thing going on in the future. So it's kind of like, okay, so are we setting that up in this regard, you know? Because, like, it's interesting because we still don't 100% know, like, a lot of stuff that's happening present day. Like, we've seen a little bit of it set up for the future arc, but not a lot. You know, because we're still in that age of, like, we haven't, like, you know, like last episode, we got a little bit of Renee kind of comparing his hopeful self in the present to his very cynical self in the future, especially when it comes to whole vigilante and, like, whether it does any good or not. You know, it's just kind of interesting. So we haven't really seen the, like, one for one of, like, this leads to this. There's a lot of in between that we don't really know about in certain regards, but this might be, like, the stepping stone to us that anti-vigilante thing. Potentially. Who knows? Once again, this could also lead to that future that Zari's from, where Argus is hunting down metahumans and stuff like that, people with abilities. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. But that's kind of interesting. So it makes this whole stalking thing potentially something much bigger than it starts off as. I'm curious what that is all about, though. I'm very interested to see where all of this takes us going forward into the next episode. And now moving on to this week's episode of Black Lightning. Quite a few things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Obviously, we're picking up with Khalil's situation, and it seems as time is going on, his conditions gotten worse and worse. Some very interesting conversation that go down between Khalil and, Jeff, for one. And the fact of the matter is, he's asking Jeff, like, promise me you'll do one thing that you will essentially kill Tobias. But Jeff is like, no, I can't do that. Because Jeff, he wants to do that. He's wanted to do that. But it's other people convincing him that's not the right thing to do because he's a hero. And the fact of the matter is, if he does this, essentially he'll be no better than Tobias if he goes off killing someone. No matter what it is Tobias has done. He's justified in, not justified, but it's understandable why you want to do it. But, it's a line he can't cross because if he does, there's no coming back from that. So he tells Khalil he can't do it. It's like, no, we got to leave it to the judicial system. And it's like, and he's like, the same one that failed me, the same one that, got me shot, the Reverend shot, my spine ripped out, even the same one that let Tobias get away with all that, but also get away with murdering your father, that same system. And it's like, you can tell it bothers Jeff because he knows it's true. Like, for him, it'd be so much easier just to kill Tobias with his own hands. He wants to, but he can't do that. And at the very least, Khalil was like, at the very least, make him suffer like he did me and promise me that. And Jeff is like, I promise. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how that ends up happening. I think Jeff is going to keep that promise. In what shape and form he's going to do about that, I don't know. I feel like it's probably going to have something to do with, like, Tobias' situation, like the anti-aging situation. It might be something that's like that, kind of leave him in essentially a crippled situation, kind of like he did Khalil. So that might be something we end up seeing in that regard. But it's kind of, Jeff is saying, like, I'm sorry, Khalil, like, I wasn't there for you when you need me. He's like, no, you were always there. I just couldn't see it. I guess for him, he was talking about the fact is that you were there for me both as Black Lightning and Jefferson Pierce, and I just didn't realize that you were always there trying to help me out. I just didn't realize it at the time. And probably, maybe, I was thinking, because at first I was thinking maybe he meant like on a subconscious level, like all the lessons you taught me was always there. That could be, I feel like that could apply in every avenue, like across all three avenues in that regard, but still. And it's sad. Jennifer, is able to kind of see, like, inside of the bodies, like the sparks inside of the body, and she sees, and that's so messed up because of her ability. Not only, on the outside can she see Khalil dying, but because of her power, she can literally see the light in him dimming out as he's dying. And it's like, that's harsh, being cursed to have that power to see the person you love dying, like, in multiple ways like that. That's super messed up. So she wants to use her powers to jumpstart his ability, jumpstart him, but she can't do that because it's like humans aren't like a battery. Who knows, like, maybe she uses too much energy and ends up shorting him out, killing him or something like that too. Then ask Lynn for help with the whole pod situation of, like, putting Khalil in one. Sadly, when it's all said and done, they can't do that because Khalil is not compatible, because they would have to put him under, and the fact of the matter is the toxins kind of released in his body and stuff like that won't allow for it. It's actually kind of interesting because I feel like this is the first episode they've actually brought up the distinction of, like, he's not a meta, he's an enhanced, which is like, well, yeah, but it's like, I don't think that's come up at all in all of this Arrowverse situation. I'm trying to think. Not just the Arrowverse. Well, this and just all the Arrowverse of, like, I don't think enhanced has come up. Like, every person with powers has always been a meta-human. Well, there's been magic introduced, but, it's just kind of interesting because in this particular case, it's so, he's the first enhanced person we came across. Well, I guess Cyanide technically counted as enhanced too, so I guess that falls in that category. But it's just kind of interesting. I feel like this is the first time they've ever explicitly kind of, like, distinguished between the two, so it's actually interesting because Lynn was trying to cross many lines, obviously, to do anything she could to help Khalil. It's like, try to use her position with the ASA to be like, try and, like, get the doctor to, I was like, oh, use our experiments or something like that. But it's like, no, all that stuff you've done is experimental. Also, let's not forget half the pod kids died because of everything that went down. To be fair, that was Jace's situation, but that's a whole conversation we'll talk about in a little bit. But other than that, she even suggests, like, can they try putting, like, the thing back in, the thing that was connected to his spine. But it's like, whoever put his spine back together, it has technology way above anyone else's, even that the doctor's seen. So, but it was even interesting because even like, you know, like I said, Lynn was kind of, like I said, pushing her weight around in the sense of being like, if anything happens to Khalil, if he dies after, like, you know, his mom's went through this much trouble to try and save his life, and you were the one standing in the way, she'll sue the hospital, and then she'll sue you personally into homelessness. It's like, jeez. But to be fair, it's like her daughter came to her, and it's like, this is someone that she does care about too, and so she's going to do whatever she can to save Khalil, you know, because she cares about him, but also because this is someone that's important to Jennifer, and also just because it's a sad situation. He tried to do the right thing and ended up, you know, in this condition. It's like, you could probably make the argument it would have been better if Tobias had just outright killed him, because it's harsh doing what he did, you know. I was hoping in some shape or form that maybe it's like, okay, Khalil may not walk in, but he'll live. But it's like, it did so much damage to him. I think it's, you know, the toxins that were keeping him from being allowed to, like, be put under were the same ones, like, you know, killing him too. Just like, it was all kind of a culmination, I think, of just like the condition he was, you know, the enhancements they made to him, the spine thing being ripped out the way it did. It was just like, his body had already changed, and now without that, I guess, to regulate the toxins in his body, he's gone. And it's, you know, it's sad because Jennifer and him just had their whole thing. And sad because, like, I brought up the whole Romeo and Juliet thing, and I felt things were going to end bad, but the fact is Khalil was still alive at the end of the last episode. I was like, okay, at the very least, maybe he's alive, everything's going to be okay. But it's like, no, it's not, you know. And Jennifer used her powers to get inside of it, you know, bring him into her head to kind of say goodbye, you know, hold each other, kind of like, oh, let's go to prom and everything. And it's just like, it's heartbreaking, it's sad, because it's like, you know, because let's not forget, even before this, before being her boyfriend and everything, Khalil was her best friend, you know. And it's just like, to lose someone like that, and it's you know, that's got to be the harshest thing, like at such a young age, to lose someone that you love and care about like that under such, you know, circumstances too. It's like, because the sad thing is, like, Tobias just keeps taking. He took, you know, Jeff's dad, and now he took Khalil from Jennifer. It's just like, all he does is take from people. Take, you know? And it's just, I don't know, it lets you a little heartbroken, you know, when it's all said and done. You see Jennifer crying, you seeing her mom crying, because I think it makes this even, like, more heartbreaking, because, like, he passes and his eyes are still open, and it just, I don't know, it breaks your heart, because, you know, everyone wishes that they could do something. You even had Grace showing up because she's trying to be there for Anissa. Like, you know, it's like, you know, I don't believe everything, you know, I'm not going to be the one to say, like, oh yeah, everything happens for a reason, because she's like, I don't believe that. Just know that, like, I'm here for you, I care, and I'm sorry that you and your family are going through this, you know, being there for Anissa in this time. And it's just kind of sad that things played out this way, you know. And then it gets even sadder because there's the whole Reverend point that he was trying to make, and then, like, Cutter got to him, which, it's just like one thing after another, just kind of like a heavy episode in that regard. I guess it kind of made things a little more lighthearted, I guess. Obviously, Jennifer was, well, it's kind of lighthearted, but not really, because it's just kind of like, wow, there's that racist lady that was like, oh my God, you're trying to steal my car. Jennifer's like, what the hell are you talking about, lady? I wasn't. She's like, hey, she tried to break into my car. It's like, Jesus, lady, can you be less of a piece of crap? Like, especially because Jennifer was already dealing with a lot. I'm sure that's why her powers went kind of like, when she charged him up, like, they kind of stayed charged and kind of kept growing. It's because it's like, she was already dealing with everything with the whole Khalil situation, angry and sad about that. Now this lady's talking all this mad crap, and she's like, oh, and blows up her car, and it's like, oh, what, that wasn't me. The fact of the matter is your car got struck by lightning. It's like, are you going to try and, you know, blame God for that? Jeff tried to siphon the power, but wasn't enough. It's interesting that Perina just happened to show up. I'm like, what is up with that? Like, how far, like, what else are you capable of? Like, I guess, like, maybe because she helped Jennifer craft a lot of stuff, like, she kind of implanted a little bit of something. Maybe she always knows where Jennifer is to a certain degree, but then, like, why wouldn't she bring that up when they were looking for Jennifer? Maybe that's supposed to be, like, her little kept secret, but maybe because of that, like, because of her ability, and her and Jennifer have such a connection, they have, like, a psychic bond now, that when Jennifer's kind of, like, in turmoil, she kind of feels it. So she already felt it before, like, you know, Jennifer's powers kicked in, but it's like, you know, It's kind of interesting. It's also neat too, like, you know, seeing Jennifer kind of get control of her powers like that. She's meditating, she's even floating. Because it's interesting because we saw a lot of that stuff. Like, it seemed like that was all in her head, but to see it kind of reflected in the real world too is kind of interesting, and showing how much she has grown, how much control she has over her abilities. So, you know, like I said, kind of, you know, it doesn't take away from the heaviness of the episode, but it kind of adds this light, you know, it just kind of adds this kind of showing you how much she's grown, you know, through her experiences and stuff, you know. Also in this episode, kind of, you know, once again, to kind of pick up make it a little lighthearted, was the whole Henderson. Jeff is like, you know, if we're going to take down Tobias, I can't, you know, keep no more secrets from you. So it's like, introduces him to the whole Gamby situation. For one, also, oh yeah, Gamby's alive. What? I love it when he opened the bookshelf and it slid in the shelf and everything, and it slid. He's like, oh, hell no. You got a secret? What? And then he's like, you got all this tech and stuff. And it's like, oh, he just like, oh, you know, it's like, you got all this tech down here and you got me using this old ass phone. And he's like, you know, we're old school. He's like, maybe cheap school. And the fact of the matter is, he's like, oh, you know, I guess Gamby, you know, you were, you know, someone tried to kill you, so you had to stay low. I got that. So it's like, I guess you're not really a tailor. He's like, no, I'm actually a tailor. It's just not all I do. And Henderson's, well, Billy for you. I just love that. I mean, obviously it's a lot to process, but it's like, okay, now everything's officially out and like on the tables, you know, but now it's like him, Gamby, and Henderson are going to officially be working together. It's probably going to be like Billy. Well, I think the reason why I said Billy, because it's like, because Henderson's name is Bill. I think maybe that's where I got, plus the whole him saying Billy, bully for you. Nevertheless, Gamby, it's going to be interesting too, because he hasn't worked with Anissa yet, so that's probably something we'll see kind of come up soon, though. But they're trying to find the computer, but sadly, you know, Tobias has already moved it. I mean, it might not necessarily be that he moved it, because obviously he's had Todd, you know, keep an eye on it and stuff like that, and working on it, so maybe that's why it wasn't in the safe. But to be fair, it might just be the fact is that Tobias had it moved. There's a lot to kind of digest about the whole Tobias situation in this episode. For one, it seems like him and Cutter have a connection. They have a past, because he's like, I never apologized from before. And she's like, there's nothing to apologize for. It's in the past. The fact of the matter is, because of what went down, it led to me becoming who I am. So I was like, oh, it seemed like there was kind of an intimate thing there, but maybe not. Maybe it's something else entirely. Which is like, maybe that's why you put up with Tobias as much as you do. Like, why you're kind of willing to work with him, because you potentially have this past. Also turns out that Tobias and Jace also have a past, because she's the one who made the anti-aging serum that he uses. Because I should have figured as much when he was like, oh, she looks exactly the same. Because he was more so the experiment, but I guess after him, she tested it on herself and it worked. Granted, I wonder, has anyone else picked that up? I don't remember them pointing that out about her, that she looks exactly the same. Maybe because they never met her before, so they don't really know how old she actually potentially is. I'm sure she probably has like falsified files and stuff like that. Potentially, I don't know. Maybe the ASA knows a lot more than her. I just don't remember, you know, Lynn bringing that up, but it might just be something that Lynn doesn't know that ASA might know. I'm curious too, because like I figured that anti-aging thing was what led to like his, you know, superhuman strength. But like Jace doesn't have that. So it's just, I guess, because we see him inject himself and we see kind of like the white. So I guess it's like, you know, probably a combination of the anti-aging serum on its own, plus like, you know, him potentially maybe being a vaccine kid himself in some shape or form. But he was the same age all those years ago. So it's not like I don't know, maybe, you know, Jace's first batch that she experimented on him with was, because she is connected to the vaccine from way back then, so it could be that there's something else to that. Because I don't know if they've ever really explained like where his superhuman strength came from, but nevertheless. Jace is willing to give him the location of the 4 metas that, you know, in the clinic and stuff like that, which is like, I'm interested to see what's going on with this, because his little group is growing bigger. He's got Todd, he's got Cutter, he's got Jace. Let's also not forget there's that other metahuman we saw a couple episodes back we have not cut back to, the dude that was heading his way to Freeland. He had gotten a call. We don't know by who, but that was interesting. He was the dude with like the teleporting ability. We've yet to actually see him pop up, so I'm curious to see what that all ends up being about and how that ties in with everything. I'm very interested to find out about these four metahumans, like who they are and what they're actually capable of. It's going to be very interesting as, you know, Tobias gains his army and stuff like that. But what I'm really interested in to see is what does Jennifer do from here, like with what happened to Khalil, like where does she go from here? Because obviously, like a lot of her families, you know, because it's interesting because like obviously a lot of their normal lives, like because obviously let's not forget, Jeff still had that whole like situation of teaching at Garfield but not being the principal anymore. That whole situation, but that kind of got put on pause because of the whole Jennifer situation. So it's like there might not be any going back to a normal life for any of them. Maybe Jennifer might have potentially had some shape or form of a chance. That was the whole point of her trying to learn how to control her abilities to potentially go back to that life. But after everything is going down, I don't know even she'd want to go back to that normal life. You know, it's going to be interesting to see, you know, what she decides to do with all this after losing Khalil like this. Because, you know, it's got to hurt and hit even harder considering the fact of the matter is he was literally in her head and she, you know, saw him vanish and, you know, kind of lost him in almost two different ways in that regard. So, but I'm very interested to see what the next episode has in store for us with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good